It's not that you stop believing in God. That would almost be easier to explain. What you're feeling is something more specific than that, and more painful. It's the sense that God is still there, still real, still present for other people. Maybe even people, people whose prayers seem to get answered, whose lives seem to carry evidence of being held. Just not for you. Not anymore. And that's what hurts the most. Not that God exists, but that it feels like everyone else still has access to him. And somehow, you've become the exception. Like at some point, you're not even sure exactly when, something shifted. The line went quiet. The sense of being known, being pursued, being wanted by something larger than yourself just stopped. And you've been trying to figure out if it was something you did, or something you are. Because the alternative, that God simply moved on, that he looked at the full picture of you and quietly closed the file, feels too specific to be random, too personal to be coincidence. If you've been living with that feeling, not as a theological argument, but as a quiet, daily ache, I want you to stay with me. Because the story you've been telling yourself about why God is done with you is missing something important. Here's what makes it convincing. You have evidence. Not just a feeling, an actual case you've built, piece by piece, over months or years of falling short in the same places. The sin you keep returning to no matter how many times you've sworn you were done with it. The prayer you prayed with everything you had and watched go unanswered while someone else has got through. The version of yourself you promised God you'd become, and the gap between that person and who you actually are. You've seen the pattern. You know the number. You know exactly how many times you've come back to God with the same confession, the same remorse, the same resolve, and then repeated the same failure. At some point, you stop being surprised by your own collapse. And somewhere in the repetition, a verdict started forming. Not out loud, not in a single moment, but quietly, incrementally, the way water shapes stone. If I were God, I would have stopped waiting for me by now. And after enough failures, that thought stops feeling like fear. It starts feeling like the truth. And that thought feels less like despair and more like logic, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because you've mistaken your own exhaustion with yourself for God's exhaustion with you. And those are not the same thing. Here's the thing about being truly abandoned. You stop caring. Not immediately, grief takes time. But eventually, when someone is genuinely gone, the longing fades. The ache dulls. You stop reaching towards something that isn't there, and you adjust to the new reality. That's what abandonment actually produces. So let me ask you something. If God were truly done with you, why do you still want him? Why does your heart still ache every time you think you've lost him? People don't chase what they never loved. Why are you still here, still watching, still searching for something that might tell you the distance isn't permanent? People don't ache for connections that were never real. They don't grieve relationships that didn't matter. The very pain you've been reading as evidence of rejection, the longing, the hollow feeling, the desperate wish that things were different between you and God. That's not what abandonment feels like. That's what love feels like when it believes it's lost something. And you can't lose something you never had. The ache itself is the evidence. Not that God left, but that something in you is still turned toward him, still oriented, still reaching, still caring about the gap. Which means the connection was never severed from his side. You're not feeling the silence of someone who walked away. You're feeling the distance of someone who is convinced they're not worth coming back to. Those are two completely different things. There's a difference between a contract and a covenant. A contract is conditional. Both parties hold up their end, or the agreement dissolves. Enough violations and it's void. That's how most human arrangements work. And it's the framework most of us unconsciously apply to our relationship with God. Perform well enough to stay in. Fail too many times and get cut. But a covenant operates on different logic entirely. It's not held together by performance. It's held together by the nature of the one who made it. A father doesn't stop being a father because his child keeps failing. The relationship isn't a contract the child can breach. It's a bond that exists independent of what either party does on any given day. That's the category God placed you in. Not a client, not a project, not a conditional arrangement. A child. And Romans 8 verses 38 to 39 isn't a motivational phrase. It's a boundary statement. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, Neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God. Paul didn't write, "Nothing except your repeated failures." He wrote nothing. And then there's Peter. The night Jesus was arrested, Peter denied knowing him 3 times. Not once, under extreme pressure, but 3 deliberate times, in front of witnesses, in the space of a few hours. By any human measure, that relationship should have been over. But on the morning of the resurrection, when the angel appeared at the empty tomb, the message wasn't just tell the disciples. It was, go, tell his disciples and Peter. And Peter, specifically, by name, the one who failed most publicly, most recently, most completely, was the one singled out to make sure he knew he hadn't been left behind. That's not an accident. That's God's character on display. And his character hasn't changed since. So here's what's actually happening when you feel like God is done with you. You're not receiving a signal from God. You're receiving a signal from shame. And shame is an extraordinarily convincing narrator. It takes real events, real failures, real patterns, real moments you wish you could take back. It constructs a story around them. A story with a conclusion already written before the evidence is even examined. You're too far gone. You have used up whatever patience was available. The door is closed now. That story feels like honesty. It feels like finally seeing yourself clearly, without the comfort of false hope. But it's not honesty. It's a distortion. Because it takes one true thing. You have failed, and draws a conclusion that was never warranted. Therefore, God is finished with you. God's love doesn't operate on a ledger. It doesn't accumulate disappointments until it reaches a threshold and tips into withdrawal. There is no threshold, not because your failures don't matter. They do, but because the mechanism that would cause God to give up on you simply doesn't exist in who he is. You've been applying human logic to a love that isn't human. Human love exhausts. Human patience has edges. Human commitment bends under enough repeated weight. His doesn't, and the voice telling you it does. The one that sounds like clear-eyed realism, like finally accepting the truth about yourself. That voice has never once spoken for God. It speaks for shame. And shame has never told anyone the truth about who they are. Let me say what shame has been drowning out. You have not been discarded. Not after the first failure. Not after the 10th. Not after whatever happened most recently that made this feeling spike again. You're not a closed file. You're not someone God looks at and feels the particular exhaustion of a person who has tried everything and run out of options. He has never run out of options. He has never looked at the full picture of you. Every hidden thing, every repeated pattern, every prayer you prayed and then ignored and decided the math didn't work out in your favor. He knew all of it before you did. And he chose you anyway. Not the future version of you that finally gets it together. Not the cleaned up version you've been trying to become for years. This version, the one who keeps coming back to the same places, the one who can't seem to hold the line, the one who wonders in the quiet moments whether any of this is still available to them. That one, chosen, known, not given up on. Peter went on to build the early church, not despite his failure, but as someone who had been found on the other side of it. Paul, who called himself the worst of sinners, became the voice that carried the gospel across the known world. Your story is not over. The fact that you still care, that you still feel the distance, still want it to be different, still showed up today looking for something, is not the behavior of someone abandoned. It's the behavior of someone still being pursued. You're not too far gone. You're not out of reach. You're not someone God is finished with. And the next chapter of your story hasn't been written yet. Before you go, I want you to do one thing. In the comments, write these 4 words. You're not done with me. Not as a declaration you've fully arrived at. Maybe as a question you're still working through. Maybe as a hope more than a certainty. Write it anyway, because sometimes the most honest prayer isn't a statement of faith. It's a decision to lean towards something before you're sure it's there. That's what Peter did, walking back toward a relationship he had every reason to believe he'd destroyed. That's what the prodigal son did, rehearsing an apology on a road he wasn't sure led anywhere anymore. And in both cases, the one they were walking toward was already moving in their direction. That's still how this works. You don't have to have it resolved to take a step. You don't have to feel the certainty before you move toward it. The distance you've been feeling isn't the final word on where you stand. It's just where you are right now. And right now is not the end of the story. God doesn't write people off. He doesn't close files, retract invitations, or quietly remove names from a list when the failures pile up past a certain point. He singles out the Peters by name. He runs toward the prodigals while they're still far off. He finds a one lost sheep and leaves the 99. That's not a God who is done with you. That's a God who has been looking for you. Share this with someone who needs to hear tonight that they haven't been given up on. And to you, still here at the end, the fact that you stayed, that you listened, that some part of you wanted this to be true, that matters. You are still wanted. You are still chosen. And this story is nowhere near over.